Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. As you see, I'm a male, so I do not plan on mansplaining women's advocacy to you. But this is an issue that's very close to our heart at IFAD. We know that women work long hours and get less pay. We know they face obstacles that they are discriminated against. But for us, there's those justice issues, but also the practical issues. The practical issues of how do you develop rural areas. And so what we do at IFAD is we work in poor and marginal communities to try to improve the livelihoods of poorer households. In doing that, we need to remember that 1.7 billion women and girls live in rural areas. In those rural areas, you have 80% of the poverty in the world. About 75% of the hunger in the world are based in those rural areas. And key to solving that are rural women. When we invest in rural women, what we are doing is investing in families, in communities, and the development of countries. Rural women are at the bedrock of their households, but they face all sorts of constraints. They have less access to land. They have less access to inputs. They have less access to markets. And so what we find in a number of countries, that 20 to 30% of productivity is lost because they lack that access. And so at the foundation of what we need to do is to make sure that we invest in women to ensure that we increase the production, increase the market access, and to empower them. So at IFAD, we've taken different approaches to do that. The first is called the household methodologies. So when we do the household methodologies, what we're trying to do is work with women and men so that they see the economic opportunities that are available to them. And you talk to men and women to see what the gender dynamics are in the household and to see how you can come about with shared prosperity, working together and so that you are improving the well-being of the household as a whole. This gets at the fundamental nature of discrimination within a household. So in practice, what this means is working in communities with the rural men and women together and to see what kind of activities we can do to improve their economic well-being. So we have a number of examples of things that we've done. So in India, we've worked with self-help women's groups to make sure that they work together to negotiate with governments so they can get the payments for environmental services. They're working to do things to improve the environment, but they need to make sure that they're in a negotiating position to get the payments that they deserve. In land, we often work on land rights. 40% of agricultural laborers are women, but only 20% of the land is owned by women. So in countries like Ethiopia, we're working on providing titles to women so that they have joint titling. They work to ensure that both men and the women are listed on the title, and so if something happens to the man, the woman is insured to keep that right of the land. In Burundi, we've been working with lawyers to help them go to courts to ensure the legal protection that they get over their land. And so we continue to work with them at a number of levels to do this. We know that ultimately, in order to improve hunger around the world, we need to work in rural areas. And we know that critical to those rural areas are women. And if we invest in women, not only do we get those economic benefits, we get the justice benefits that allow them to be in a stronger position. One of the things that it's nice to be here in Canada because of the Canadian Feminist International Development Policy. Now, working in a UN agency, you see the strength of that policy in the day-to-day work that we do. They push us to go even further than we've done in the past. So I wanted to end by thanking them for that advocacy. It's made a big difference in our institutions to convince those internally and the governments we work with to make sure that we invest in rural women so that we can achieve the SDGs, particularly around hunger and rural poverty. Thank you.